Are you thinking about starting or nourishing a career in menstrual cycle health? Then consider joining our 9-month online holistic hormone and cycle coaching certification training. In this training, you get science-backed and evidence-based education, as well as teachings about the somatic aspects of having a menstrual cycle, functional nutrition, hormone testing, and much, much more. We will have incredible live group sessions, and you will get guidance from me. There will also be amazing guest teaching lectures from experts in the field, and at the end you will receive an official certificate of completion that is globally recognized. As a listener of the Planting Seeds podcast, you receive an additional €100 off when you use the code PODCAST when you sign up. Click on the link in the show notes to learn more. As a person in their preconception phase, and as someone who thinks a lot about her future children and how I want to nourish them and how I want to support them through foods, this was such an absolutely eye-opening and nourishing episode with Kate Pope. We spoke about what regenerative nutrition is, about her journey, how she got into nutrition, and what we both are seeing in the current diet for both parents and babies, and how we could potentially improve that. We spoke briefly about the mainstream diet for children these days and how she kind of does that differently, how she offers a non-mainstream diet to her children, but I actually think it's a very solid way of providing children with food and the way that she does it. And she also spoke a little bit about how she transitioned to solids for her children. And then we also dove into what we may see in children when their food is not supporting them. And we spoke specifically about gut health. We spoke about blood sugar and blood sugar dysregulation. And she provides us with some easy to implement tips to get started with all of this when this is the first time that we're hearing about this. Overall, this episode just really absolutely blew my mind when it comes to supporting our children. And I'm definitely going to be implementing some of the things that she shared today, and I'll definitely will do some of her courses. So I sat together with Kate Pope, and she is a mom, a holistic chef, a nutritional therapy practitioner, as well as a certified GAPS practitioner. Through her whimsical kitchen classes, she educates families and communities on the importance of local food systems and cooking meals at home for physical, mental, and emotional health. From 2016 until 2021, Kate worked as a private chef in Seattle, Washington, and the Big Island of Hawaii. And she founded Regenerative Cooking School in 2019 so that she could reach more parents and families, so that her message of advocating for gut health and real food for children could get across. And you can work with Kate in her signature course, Mama Baby Biome, or in her Baby Biome First Foods plan. And with her husband, Alex, they've self-published 3 books, which I will share in the show notes so you can look them up. And you can find her on Instagram at Wild Nutritionist or her website, regenerativeCookingSchool.com. I hope that you will get as much out of this episode as I have. Enjoy listening.
Hello, friends. My name is Iris Josephina. I'm your host, and you are listening to the Planting Seeds podcast. On the Planting Seeds podcast, we explore how we can cultivate a more gentle relationship with our cyclical bodies, the earth, each other, and the world around us through using our senses, science, the subtle, and the sacred. On Planting Seeds, we talk about all those topics you've always wanted to talk about. We are shamelessly opening up the conversations that we all so desperately need to settle in our precious bodies and relate to each other in a more open, truthful, and empowered way. I'm so glad you're here today.
Welcome to the show, Kate. Thank you for making time to be here with us today.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
So before we dive into all of our juicy topics, I'm curious what your background is and how you got interested in nutrition or got like this spark to work with and in nutrition?
Absolutely. So, my background is actually in dance. I was a dancer my whole life, and I went to university for dance. I got a BFA in performance and choreography, and then I also studied arts and medicine pretty extensively while I was there. So, I worked with people with Parkinson's. I did my thesis in the youth justice system. So, I worked with youth who are incarcerated. I worked with people with disabilities and in the hospital settings. And so I've always had this galvanizing force around health and community. And then when I finished my degree, I was very exhausted, what I now know as adrenal fatigue. And I started learning through Chinese medicine and with an acupuncturist about how nutrition can really impact my health. And I'd always been like health minded, and I'd always been interested in food and loved food. But it was at this time that I became a locavore. So I started eating local food, pasture-raised meats, and it really made a big difference, not only in like my health physically, how I felt, but also my emotional and spiritual health. It raised my morale a lot to get to know local communities. And so that was a big part of my life once I had such good healing results from eating local, delicious, high quality food. And I moved to Seattle, Washington for a dance internship. And I also started working for a farmer there. At the farmer's market, I would work for her, and I traded for meat and eggs every week.
I love that.
So I got all my meat and eggs covered through trade, super high quality, and I had a lot of food. And I would get these big roasts, and I would invite people over to my house, and I would say, like, this is amazing food. Have you been to the farmer's market? This is just so delicious. Look, this is healing food. This is so good for our bodies. This is what, has happened to me. And eventually I became a private chef. And during that time, I just wanted to learn more and more about nutrition. So I did 2 nutrition trainings, and they were really foundational and amazing. And I kept learning how to cook real and local food around me. And then I had a baby. And I felt like there was a huge gap in what babies actually need and what's out there for moms to learn. And so I started to shift my business towards like general nutrition and cooking, to cooking for babies, cooking for moms to recover from birth, and helping children thrive symptom-free so that there's balance and health and harmony in the family.
Beautiful. I love that your background is in dance. I love dance. I used to dance my entire life. It's such a love language for me. Yeah, beautiful. It all sounds so logical and interconnected, your journey. I love that you would trade for like high quality, super delicious food. I love that.
Yeah, because making it as a dancer, there was a lot of jobs that I was piecing together, and the food was out of my price range, but I wasn't willing to sacrifice it. So I was like, okay, well, I'll just get another job that covers my food. And she had never had a person like ask her for a trade before. And this farmer in particular like took me under her wing, and we're still really close today. And it is a really integrated and sweet story. And the truth that I teach is the truth that I live.
I love that. I think that's also one of the reasons why I was so attracted to your work and what you do, because you embody it so much. And now it makes sense to me how you have mastered the embodiment. It's because you're also a dancer. Like now all the pieces like fall together for me. It's really beautiful. So when we're speaking about nutrition, you sometimes talk about regenerative nutrition. Could you speak to that and maybe explain what that is, especially for people who maybe don't know?
Yeah, I would love to. So I named my business Regenerative Cooking School. And the reason I did that is because in our bodies, our cells regenerate. The body doesn't waste time or energy on repairing cells. We always build new cells. And all parts of your body regenerates. You have a new liver, you have new skin. And so really, when you spend a period of time working with healing foods, you truly can renew and regenerate your whole body, brain, and being. And this mirrors what is really a strong movement right now in regenerative agriculture. So the state of the soil and the soil health is directly correlated to our body's health, and specifically our gut microbiome. And so when we use regenerative foods to help heal our body, we are more connected to the earth, and we are more connected to what heals the earth. And so I teach regenerative nutrition to help people connect the dots between not only what we're eating, but how we're sourcing and connecting to the land with our food. And I think that this is an extremely important piece of the puzzle for really living an embodied lifestyle of health and harmony with the earth and in our families.
Yeah, totally. I agree. I feel that, connecting to the land and to our food also reminds us of our humanity and the reciprocal relationship that we can have with the land and then also with our bodies. So I absolutely love what you do. And I also feel that this approach is not mainstream. And yes, there is a lot of movements and there is a lot of people talking about this. But if we look at the current mainstream way of looking at nutrition, especially for pregnant people and people who give birth and people who are postpartum and their babies, this is not what we see. So what are you currently seeing in that mainstream field, and what is your take on how we could improve that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I say, regenerative agriculture is a growing movement. And I know that it is because 10 years ago, I would pack meat in my suitcase and fly to my parents' house because I knew that I wouldn't be able to readily source the quality of meat that I wanted. So I'd put frozen meat in my bag and travel across the United States. And nowadays, I don't really have to do that. And it's not to say that it wasn't happening. It just wasn't as readily available or as searchable or findable. No one was really shipping meat to your door. And I'm talking about the United States here. So that's a big growing movement. But then at the same time, a lot of people don't even know what regenerative agriculture is. So it's kind of it's easy to get into the bubble and feel wow, this movement is really taking hold. And it is. And I believe that. And at the same time, like you said, it's definitely not the mainstream message. And there's still a lot of demonization of meats and fats that are going on. And I would say that, for pregnancy, there's a lot of fear around food in general. There's a fear of pregnant women, just with everything with real food. I mean, you have to be, if you're looking and taking mainstream advice, you would have to be so cautious. And that's just not the approach I took at all, because I really learned through my body and I trust my body. But yeah, we have a government program that helps give mothers and babies food stamps, and it's called WIC. And this program still only allows you to buy low-fat dairy. It doesn't allow you to buy very many animal products. It's really limited in what the government recommendations are, or the dietary guidelines that are in the United States and then also spread around the world. I would say that most people are eating, cereals for their babies and children. People are still really thinking whole wheat, fruits and vegetables. It's still very much connected to the food pyramid, which is basically upside down and backwards. And I think to find real health information, you have to be an investigator. If you want to help your children's bodies heal, you have to really be the detective in their life and safeguard them from a lot. There's a lot of brushing off of the harms of toxicity, a lot of denying that it's happening, a lot of justifying, water quality, processed food for children, sugar for children, all of that, I would say, is still extremely prevalent in the mainstream. And while people are really open to what I have to say, and, obviously some people it resonates with right away, or they're unsure, but they try it and their baby's, symptoms reverse. So that's really exciting. But there's still a lot of people who would think that I teach quackery and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Well, we still have a long way to go, but I'm so happy that you're here and you're not going anywhere, and you keep, showing people the possibilities. And then when we're looking at the mainstream diet for children, you already spoke to it a little bit. What's your view on that? If we just follow the mainstream
pattern that we are invited to follow as our children grow. How do you feel about that?
Well, I would say I was raised on that. I was raised on a mainstream diet. I was raised on cereal and low-fat milk, and my parents did cook like my mom cooked, so that was a great blessing, and she would always cook like a roast, and she was trying to save money, so we didn't buy a lot of deli meats. She would like get a huge roast and cook it herself and slice it, but it was still a ton of sugar that I ate, a ton of soda, and what I see now is like hot chocolate for a 2-year-old from Starbucks, completely normal. I see snacks that are they're lending themselves to blood sugar dysregulation. They're not really like the building blocks of foods that children need. If you look to school lunches, it's still low-fat milk. There's a lot of processed bread, and even there's a huge push right now for like meatless days and meatless Mondays,
Oh, yeah.
meatless Fridays. There's a big vegan and vegetarian agenda, I would say, more vegan, which is pushed by corporations. And these corporations, they have a purpose, which is to make money. And that's where the regenerative agriculture piece comes in. But even if you're not there yet, even if you can't get regenerative, biodynamic, basically what regenerative agriculture is in a nutshell is animals are raised in their natural environment. The purpose of the farmer is to keep the health of the soil, and the animals are extremely important. In fact, without animals as that cog in the machine, regenerative agriculture can't happen. So essentially what we're looking for is animals that are raised outdoors in their natural environment, right? That's the healthiest animal you can get, raised on the diet that they're supposed to have.
Yeah.
But if you're not there yet, I would never tell a mother to not eat meat because she can't source the best quality. It's still so important. Animals have detox systems. Animals are still providing our bodies with what we need to be healthy. And that's a part of being human. We're apex predators. Our brain needs these foods. And so I am very bothered by these agendas that are pushing plant-based diets on children and putting pressure on them to save the world because meat is bad for the planet, which is a myth.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Yeah, I totally agree. And I'm glad that you're touching upon this because I don't feel that a lot of people dare to talk about this, but it's so important to understand the mechanisms behind it. And you mentioned a few, like the corporate interest of these specific movements and pushing the agendas. And I've actually seen it in children. I've seen it in children from friends and in the way that they behave, like when they're on a plant-based diet, and it's wildly different than people who are on a non-plant-based diet. So I'd say for many people, if you would like lay out what you feed your children, you're offering quite a non-mainstream diet to your children. And I was curious whether you could take us on a little journey about what that looks like and what your transition to solids looked like for you and your children.
Yes, absolutely. So this has been one of the because you brought up, how it's hard to talk about against these larger voices and these larger movements, which seemingly have a good purpose. Like we all want a better, healthier planet, and none of us want animal cruelty, et cetera, et cetera. And so I dug into the research around what babies need. First of all, what mamas need to recover from birth and what foods helped us to have a healthy pregnancy. And really what just nailed it down for me was understanding how a baby develops. What nutrients are extremely important for brain and immune health, and why a digestive system that is properly functioning with a healthy and robust microbiome is the route to getting that healthy brain and immune health. So when we look at the nutrients, some of the most important nutrients for brain health are vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin K. These are all fat-soluble vitamins, and they come mainly from our animal products. These fats are so important for both the brain and the immune system. All of our B vitamins, especially B6 and B12, extremely important for brain development. Omega fats, omega-6, omega-3s, omega-9s, all really important for brain. where do they come from and the most bioavailable sources? This is from our animal products. Specifically for the omegas, like our healthy fish, fatty fish can be really, really beneficial for babies, but we can also find our omegas in pastured eggs, so eggs from chickens that are raised outdoors, and also in grass-fed and finished beef. There's a high amount of omegas. So these are also great sources of our animal foods that are really important for building the brain. When it comes to our minerals, like iron and zinc, both also readily found in animal products. And not only are we finding these nutrients in animal products, but they are ingested by the body in a way that is created by nature, meaning there's a complex of nutrients. Not only are we consuming zinc, but we're consuming a nutrient complex that helps us to absorb and assimilate that zinc so much better because it's from a natural food source in the animal. And when it comes to transitioning to solids, I basically want to continue the gut health of the baby. So continue to develop the gut and digestive system, because this is the foundation of all of our health. If we can't digest our nutrients, if we're not absorbing and assimilating the nutrients, we can't build the immune system. We can't build our brain as well. So the foods that build the digestive health also support immunity, because 80% of our immune system is in the gut. What that looks like for me is starting with a simple meat stock. And this is made from a meat which has a joint in it. So something like a foot, a wing, a neck, a shank, a head. All of these things provide us with collagen and gelatin. And the gelatin-rich foods help keep the mucous membrane intact. And this is the lining of our digestive system. And that's where the microbiome lives. So we have a healthy mucous membrane in there. We have a healthy microbiome. And that leads to health around the body.
Yeah, it makes so much sense. But I think I have never heard anybody speak about giving children meat stock as a first food. Like, it's so unconventional. I mean, in my brain, it is so normal, but in the mainstream, it is so unconventional to even do that.
Yeah, that is so interesting, because I sometimes don't even realize like how out of it I am until I'm doing something and someone's like, wait, what? What are you doing? I'm like, oh yeah, right. Okay. So let me just explain this to you a little bit more. And that's why I just love to teach nutrition through physiology, because once we understand how the body absorbs nutrients and how the immune system works and why allergies come up in the first place, then we can get back to basics. And this is like such a revolution as well, because reclaiming cooking for mothers is like a big deal. You know, there was a huge movement against getting mothers out of the kitchen, getting women to work. And as great as that is, I'm all for moms being able to do what makes them feel best. We cannot ignore the fact that food is a foundational piece of health for our families. When we cook our food at home, we imbue it with our love. We touch the ingredients. We make food that can alchemize healing in the body. And that is like the biggest part of my message. Like, moms, this healing power is in your hands. And I say healing because babies are being born sick. More than any other generation, we have symptoms. And it has to do with our toxic world. So I don't like to say all of this to create alarm in people's systems and to have everyone be, oh, I'm so afraid, even though I think people are anyway. But to say, moms, you can have an arsenal of healing foods that are so simple and straightforward to make that absolutely transform your family's health, starting with your babies.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So you started with meat stock for your children as like one of their first solid foods when they were about 3 months old?
6 months old. So I recommend for a breastfed baby to be fed ideally from the breast exclusively until about 6 months old. So if your baby's really hungry, you're really interested in solids, you can start a little bit earlier, like 5.5 months. If your baby was on formula for any or all of their life, you can start with solid foods with meat stock sooner. And the reason that you would want to do that is because formula is a processed food. And so no matter how necessary it was, it is still going to impact the state of the gut health and the microbiome. And so you can start solids earlier when your baby is formula fed, because you can then use the healing meat stock and the other foods to help wean off of the formula as soon as possible. So for breastfed babies, the average is around 6 months. For formula or combo fed babies, slightly earlier. And this is based on, I teach this in my course, but basically, like, yes, age is a factor. And you also want to look at other cues like, is baby sitting up? Is baby interested in food? Is baby turning its head toward the spoon? Is baby turning its head away from the spoon, right? Like, all of those are also cues that you can cumulatively stack to make the best decision for you, coming from you as the mom who knows baby best, as to when you want to start solids.
Great. I can't wait to have a baby and try all of this out, to be honest. I don't have babies of my own yet, but I'm so excited about all of this.
That's so fun.
Yeah, you spoke about gut health and how that is related to overall health and immunity.
Mm-hmm.
For people listening who are like unsure how to like determine what you can recognize in children, could you speak to what people may see in their kids as they're growing from baby to toddler? And what may be like signals to, to give them some extra meat stock or to really implement that to ensure, a healthy baby microbiome?
Absolutely. So we start with meat stock because meat stock is a really simple to digest food full of good gut healing nutrients or gut supportive nutrients. And then we go on to introducing some pureed meats, eventually local and seasonal vegetables pureed in the stock, and drops of fermented brine here and there, which supports the microbiome. We go on to introduce eggs and avocado. It's a methodical step-by-step process that builds the gut, starting with the easiest foods to digest and building up to more difficult foods like a raw vegetable, which eventually you would get to. And there are so many signs that can point to a need for gut healing, because really the root of all of our disease is in our gut. And Hippocrates actually said this, the root of all health is in our gut. And anything that is like an eczema symptom, a chronic runny nose, even excess whininess, fussiness, colic, which is often discomfort in your baby's tummy, especially skin stuff, which I mentioned. That's a really, really popular one. Failure to gain weight, anything that stands out to you or you've been told around like failure to thrive, all of those can be directly addressed through food at home. And in fact, it's the best way to do it because it's a foundational approach to your baby's body healing anything itself on its own. I mean, the body goes towards health. The body knows it needs health. And so when we start to change the environment, the body changes too and responds really, really well. Picky eating is another one. If your baby is picky or only wants a particular food all the time, that would be a really strong marker to look into gut healing, specifically with food.
And when we're talking about blood sugar, which is something that I've been thinking about a lot, especially when like just observing what is happening in children from friends. Obviously, I don't say anything, but with my knowledge on blood sugar in adults and working with balancing adults' blood sugar on the daily, I've been wondering, like, is there ways that we can definitely do better to help our children manage their mood through just basically balancing their blood sugar? What's your take on that?
Oh, yes. This is such an important topic and something that I know resonates with people because whenever I speak about this on Instagram, it gets a lot of views and hits and comments and questions. And so one of the things I would do right away with my son, because he's a very even-keeled baby, he has a great demeanor, he's very alert, he's very present, to the point where people are constantly saying things to me and pointing out his skills. So I can really, really clearly notice when something's not right. And trust me, there have been plenty of times when things have been not right and we've worked with his body. So one thing when I would maybe be in between feedings or we'd be getting caught up in playing or I'd be doing the dishes and he's, also helping me, picking up spoons and stuff like that, a little unnecessary cranky or whininess. It's like I automatically go to the physiologic needs of the body. And I would just swipe a little bit of coconut oil in his mouth, or I would give him a little bit of butter and honey. And I would pretty much immediately see the moods shift. So that's telling me that his body is either hungry, like maybe he actually needs a full meal at this time because babies are constantly needing things and that's their design and that's okay. And also possibly just a little blood sugar dip, which can be resolved by adding in additional fats for baby, because those fats are really nourishing for the brain. We don't know what metabolic processes are going on at the moment in our babies. And so I find that like if we're kind of in between meals, it doesn't seem like he needs a full meal, let me just give him a good snack, a good swipe of good animal fat, and he'll tell me right away if he wants more, that kind of thing. So we do that quite a bit, and it really works.
That's such a beautiful way to approach this, because I know a lot of people who would like give their children endless amounts of snacks, which brings them literally puts them on a blood sugar roller coaster for an entire day.
Exactly. We don't want our children, the snack culture is out of control. And it's just like we need to stop that. We need to stop giving our children empty sugars and calories, because this is not helping them in the long term. Sometimes symptoms come up in healing, and that is so healthy and such a good sign. We have to really reframe that. So if you're working with healing foods and you see eczema increase or something like that, know that the body is working something out, and we really want to prioritize a long-term gain over a short-term symptom. So in terms of our blood sugar regulation, if a baby is hungry, obviously the main thing we would want to do is to feed them, but we wouldn't want to sacrifice their health and physiology by feeding them something quick and sugary. Even though that's what they say they want, we would want to give them something that's going to provide long-term fuel, like animal fat or a mini meal. We're often giving our son meat like multiple times throughout the day, sausage with tons of fat, because it's so good for him and it helps him to thrive all day long and to sleep well at night. If he was on fruits and carbs all the time, his body wouldn't be able to sustain as well. And I'm not saying that fruits and carbs are bad. I'm saying that most of the quick grab snacks we have access to in our modern world are carbohydrates, which the body burns through much quicker, like a sprint. Whereas when we rely on fats and proteins, we have a long burning fuel, more like a marathon.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more with you. Like, I'm so much on the same page with you, like for the future of my own children. And I'm also just really excited to witness this in a child. I've obviously seen people, approach it in this way, like amongst friends, but I'm really excited to see it in my own kids. And then also, I think as a mom, you also have to develop this wisdom, like, oh, my baby needs this now, or my baby needs that now. And I'm just really excited to experience that.
It's so precious.
Yeah, I can imagine. And I can also imagine that, if people are listening to this and they're hearing this for the first time, maybe they're feeling like, uh-oh, what am I doing wrong? Where to start? So do you have any tips or any wisdom for people who are just like peeking around the corner and like, oh, I'm interested in this? What is a good way to start with all of this?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I want to say, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh my gosh, I've done everything wrong, I'm connecting all these dots and I'm really starting to understand why my kid's behavior, skin, immune system, etc. is the way that it is, instant forgiveness, right? We can just forgive ourselves for what we did not know and start building small. The best place to start is meat stock. Meat stock is super simple to make. It's very healing. You can eat it multiple times a day. It will support blood sugar regulation. It will support immune system. It will support gut health. So I always advise people starting with meat stock. And, the next thing probably that you would want to do is you would want to assess, what do I have the capacity to change right now? Because making changes in our life, around our food, around our lifestyle, takes effort. And I don't like to I don't like to sugarcoat that. It's work. And we have to be ready for that. So really assessing, what can I do right now that will take one burden off of our family, or what will help my children the best as the next step. I think something else really simple to do is to increase your meat intake, probably. Most people can do that. So starting your day with sausage, sugar-free sausage, like just ground meat and maybe some spices, or even just salt and pepper and eggs. That's like a really solid way to get your blood sugar on track for the day, get your protein and animal fat needs started, and then just let yourself eat those healing foods, healing savory foods as much as you want throughout the day, and same for your child. I go into great depths about what it takes to change your lifestyle for healing food and to reverse our children's symptoms in my courses and on my Instagram. There's a lot of information there, so people can definitely do a little deep dive on that page and find what feels really good for them to start. But I think centering animal fats and meat stock as a top priority is really going to shift things in a pretty remarkable way without too much overhaul of your whole life.
Yeah, that sounds great. And I can imagine that these types of food, I mean, this is how I've seen it in my own practice and in my own life, they give like pretty quick visual changes. It's pretty instant, I would say. And obviously, foods are never a quick fix, but I've been so amazed by the wisdom of food that we just see emanating from the body, if I can say it like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I always like to get people out of the silver bullet mindset because that is the culture that we live in. You know, everybody wants a quick fix for the healing, and that's just not the way that it works.
No.
And at the same time, I say make these changes, and within a week, you will have tangible differences in your life because the body just responds. You know,
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I feel so much better. And I hear it again and again from moms, and they're just so relieved because finally they have something reliable. And like I said, they don't have to necessarily overhaul their whole life. They can just add in really beneficial foods in ways that make sense for them and their babies. And it's like, voila, you've got it. Look at that. Everyone's feeling better.
And I love that you mentioned this because I think it also gives people hope, because I can imagine if you have to see your child like suffer skin issues or gut issues, it can be really heartbreaking as a parent. So it's really hopeful to hear that you've seen so many beautiful results in people that you work with, and that it doesn't have to be rocket science, and that people can do it from their own home.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd love to give an example if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
So my son, the main symptoms that I will see from him typically are behavioral. So whenever something's going haywire with his behavior, I am cataloging straight away and like, okay, what was different? What was new? What changed about his diet that could be contributing to this expression, right? And so we went out to a restaurant, which we do rarely, but we still do. We like to go out to eat, and it's a very clean restaurant, organic, so we trusted it. We got him one of his favorite dishes, which is a bowl of clams. This is an adult-sized bowl of clams for a 22-month-old, and he ate every single bite. But I noticed the clams were a bit winey. The wine that the clams were made in was a bit much. And I had brought my own meat stock to the restaurant, so I poured the meat stock in with the clams, and he ate every bite. And clams are a really beautiful food for babies and mothers, really nutrient dense. And he just was loving it, slurping it all up, and I was so pleased. And we get home, and within about 2 hours, he's like screaming, and this is very unusual. And so my husband looks at me and goes, "Do you think there was sugar in the clams?" And I go, I don't know. That seems so unlikely that there was sugar in clams. And we had this dish before ourselves. And even when we weren't there with our son, we had said like, oh, Augie would love this. And it's like a local clams and da-da-da-da. But he just, phase one was like meltdowns, even to the point of like throwing himself on the floor. Just very unusual behavior that we know is not typical of our child. And so we're about 3 days into this. The next phase is like a dripping faucet nose, also very uncharacteristic of him, and something we'd seen before, but like not normal at all. And now it's kind of changed to like a mucousy green snot the third day, less faucet running, but still congested and obviously frustrated from this. And so what this boils down to is the restaurant's use of this wine. And, wine actually is a good food to cook with. We've cooked with wine at home and given it to our son, but we don't know anything about the quality of wine that they were using. Wine also often has additives. It often could have sugar. It could have weird ingredients. How cheap was this wine they're using? How good was it? We don't know. But what we do know is that it caused a reaction in our son. And this is something that is a big bummer because it's like it creates a lot more work. And part of the reason why I like to help parents with this is because we can take some of the mystery out of it. We can take some of the onus off of us, and we can just take one step back from this reactivity and say, okay, how can I best support my son? How can I forgive myself for making this mistake? Because obviously I felt bad. Like, I feel like I screwed up. I shouldn't have let him have that. I should have done something differently in the get-go. But really what's going to help us move forward is just safeguarding against that in the future and giving him remedies in the moment that are going to help him. So at this time, when he's showing these kind of symptoms, he's not having any fruit, because fruit would further proliferate this sort of gut flora haywire situation that's happening. We want to give him warm foods, warming foods like how you would when your baby has the flu or something like that. So, think chicken soup. We never give him grains anyway, but no grains, no cold foods, and extra support for his microbiome. So we put in his nasal passageways, we put a clean probiotic, we put it in his ears, we put it in his mouth, and we cuddle him and love him and say, Augie, we're so sorry. We know this isn't making you feel good. We know you don't normally feel this way. But at the same time, it was a great, learning moment for us as the parents. Yet again, even though we're so informed and we're so careful, blah, 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 it happened. We had this mistake, we had this hiccup. And yes, people are that sensitive. Humans are that sensitive to foods that aren't right for our bodies. So while we're working towards resilience in our son, that he can eat a wide variety of foods, high quality, delicious foods, we are also, he's still a baby. He's still young. He's not even 2 years old. And so it is our responsibility to safeguard him and to keep him just with those healing, building foods, I like to call them. And yeah, that's just one example of like when behavior directly correlates with food and how I go about addressing, assessing, forgiving myself, and working through it in the moment.
Thank you so much for sharing this example, because I feel that this is something like tangible that people can relate to, like a situation that is likely to happen in people's lives. So thank you for sharing that with us and illustrating how you deal with it when it happens. And I think the forgiveness part is so important, especially as parents, that we implement that in our day-to-day. And then to close off, I think many people by now are very interested in where they can find you and what you're offering, what they can learn with you.
Absolutely. So you can find me at Instagram on Wild Nutritionist, on Instagram at Wild Nutritionist. And my website is regenerativeCookingSchool.com. I have several courses, 2 of which are my signature courses. One is called Mama Baby Biome, and this is the course for the whole family. This is the course that teaches healing after birth for women and how to reverse picky eating, how to reverse eczema. There are several cook-alongs, cookbooks, and cooking instructions in this course. And it's a very foundational approach to integrating with regenerative agriculture, with healthy family dynamics, and cooking at home, sourcing your food. We have a really big international group, which is so exciting. People from all over the world who are in on this mission and reversing their baby symptoms at home and children's symptoms, and just all around feeling better as a family unit. And then I have a course for the time of starting solids. So this will take you through step by step how to introduce solids the gut health way and how to support anything that comes up when you start solids. What does it mean if my baby reacts to food, and how do I deal with it? How do I help them to digest more foods? I teach all of that in First Foods. It's called Baby Biome First Foods course. And that is also available on my Instagram and through my website.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And you also have a couple of books. Do you want to share about your books?
Yeah, I have some cookbooks. 2 of the cookbooks go along with the courses, and right now you can only get them with the course, but I have one cookbook called Cooking an Act of Love, and that is available to grab on my Instagram or my website, and that is a winter seasonal cookbook, and really you can use it at all times, but it does have, citrus, which is a seasonal winter food, and it has some fancy recipes for the holidays, like prime rib. It has how to shuck oysters, how to ferment carrots and lemons, and I think a couple other fermentation recipes and some yummy desserts. So Cooking an Act of Love is available for immediate download on my Instagram.
Beautiful.
I will make sure to paste everything in the show notes so people can definitely find your courses and your books and your Instagram so that they are directed to the right place. And I just want to really thank you for your time and your wisdom and for coming on here to share it all with us and give us like a peek into regenerative nutrition and how to incorporate that into our family lives.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, with your friends, with your family, post about it on social media, or leave a rating or a review on all the platforms. To catch all the latest news from me, you can follow at the Planting Seeds Podcast on Instagram or at Cycle Seeds on Instagram, or you can go to my website, www.cycleseeds.com. Thank you again so much, and I'll see you next time.